What if conferences were decided by a college's location? I haven't been the biggest fan of recent realignment, so today I've reshaped the country with 10 pretty even conferences. I'm gonna see how these new conferences would change the college football world over a 10-year time frame. And do you know how fun MAC football is now that we get Notre Dame at Ohio State on a Wednesday night? We will be tracking which conference wins the most championships, which one is the highest ranked as the next 10 years play out, and which one takes the biggest step back with their new members. Every season I'll be simulating the conference championship week, and then we'll spectate important games with playoff implications like this one in the SEC between Alabama and Tulane. You have to keep in mind though, the SEC is not the powerhouse that it used to be because Tulane is undefeated in conference play, but they're ranked a lot lower than Alabama. I'm very excited to see what team becomes the powerhouse in the next 10 years with this new alignment, and it could all start here if Tulane is able to take down the Crimson Tide. To my surprise, they've put up a pretty good fight. They're only down by 7, but they're gonna throw an interception with 30 seconds left, which means they're losing. They had a chance at making the playoffs, winning the SEC championship, but instead that has been ruined. Literally on the first play we spectate, Tulane ends their season, but around the rest of the college football world and like the ACC, teams like NC State need to win their conference championship to make the playoffs. In the new look American Conference, you actually have 4 teams ranked inside the top 25, and the Big 12, our biggest conference in this realignment with 15 total colleges, is very disappointing. Then you have the Big 10, where I made sure that Kansas and Missouri are in the same conference. The Tigers are actually being really successful. And Conference USA is currently the home of my Kentucky Wildcats. We're in here with our rivals Louisville. I find the MAC to be the funniest conference though, because we've put Michigan, Notre Dame, and Ohio State in there, and even Michigan State, but they're hard to notice since they're at the bottom of the standings. They underperformed this season, and in the Mountain West Conference, Colorado's the only team that's found any success. Now the Pac-12's not perfect, it's not back exactly to how it was, but we do have teams like Oregon and USC in here. And we already talked about the SEC, so on to the final conference, the Sun Belt, between the states of Georgia and Florida. I'm going to recap the conference standings every year so you can see how your favorite college does. Dillon Gabriel won the Heisman. And conference championship week had some interesting results, like Texas losing to Baylor in the Big 12 championship and NC State securing their spot in the playoffs. Before we see the full bracket, we'll see that Shedeur Sanders was probably snubbed of the Heisman Trophy. 50 passing touchdowns. Ashton Jeanty led the country in rushing yards and touchdowns. But that's nothing compared to what he's doing in real life. And our top 2 receivers, one comes from Tulane and the other is Jaden Williams from Texas State. From the looks of it though, with Michigan's loss to Notre Dame in the MAC Conference Championship, we don't have a single undefeated team in the entire country. And I think Colorado fans are going to be extremely disappointed to find out they've been snubbed from a playoff spot. The thing is though, is the teams in their conference did not stand out. Nobody else was ranked, so it was like they didn't have any quality wins. And that's why we're going to be revisiting this conference ranking so much, because as you can see, the Mountain West is far below everybody else. Location's not helping out Colorado right now, but there's plenty of time for that to change. And of course, we have to spectate who's going to win our first national championship, though NC State and Michigan have made a surprise run. It also caught me a little off guard how close Tulane was to making it there, but they fell just short, and Michigan has a chance to win back-to-back championships. They're representing the MAC conference while NC State is representing the ACC. And we have ourselves a super tight finish because it's only a 3-point game. This is the type of season that NC State fans have been dreaming about that didn't happen. And if they can finish off this drive with a touchdown, the ACC is going to win the first championship in this video, but that pass is wobbling. Michigan could have easily picked off that ball. I'm not sure why they deflected it. Now they have all the time in the world to sling it towards the end zone. But once again, the Wolverines refused to catch the ball, and on 3rd down, they let them hold that. I really want to see the MAC conference win the first championship, but it seems like that's not going to be the case. And here we go. 2nd and goal for Grayson McCall. He got that snap a little bit high, but he was able to bring it in. Enough time to go to his flat, and they didn't pick it. Michigan has been so close to getting some of these balls. Now on 3rd down, they swat it. And it looks like we are going to be headed to overtime if they hit this. That is exactly what is going to happen. And I have to say, it's pretty surprising to see Michigan here as well, just like NC State. I'm filming this with the updated rosters, but the Wolverines probably had a pretty easy conference schedule. And even though they got the ball first in overtime, it seems like they're having no issues getting into the end zone as Orgy takes it in. There's a chance the MAC conference wins it all again. And I think they should be one of the more dominant conferences because Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame should have a good record every year. That could lead to some smaller schools emerging from there as well. That is going to be intercepted by Michigan. And the first national championship in this video goes to the Wolverines. We have 9 more of these coming, but right now it is MAC Conference 1, all the other conferences 0. And after losing a couple of their best juniors to the NFL, I highly doubt that Michigan's going to run it back again. When it comes to the transfer portal, there's some interesting names out there like Ohio State safety Caleb Downs, and then quarterback for Kansas Kansas, Jalen Daniels. But I think if anybody should be concerned, it's Michigan State in the MAC conference. They lost Aiden to USC, and that's the same place Jalen Daniels went. Lastly, for the portal, I want to point out that my Wildcats, Kentucky, signed Caleb Downs. And nothing about the top recruiting classes in the country really surprises me yet, but we'll see how much this changes over the next 10 years. I will say though, every conference had a recruiting class ranked inside the top 25 besides the Mountain West. Colorado's down here at 69. And before we start season number 2, despite just having a national champion, the MAC conference is ranked as one of the worst. What's crazy is they might not even have a playoff team this season because apparently no one went better than 9-3. And there is one small sliver of hope for the Mountain West Conference because Texas Tech is undefeated. That's what they need to get better. Out in the Pac-12, it is nice to see a Boise State team with 2 losses ranked in the top 7. And we might watch that conference championship, but here in the SEC, Alabama isn't even in their conference championship and they still might be the only playoff team. It's taken a big step back, and in the Georgia-Florida Conference, the Sun Belt, you can see that Georgia and UCF are both up there. That's probably going to be a good game as well. In the ACC, Liberty and North Carolina made the conference championship. Clemson is missing it. And then we have the American Conference. I wish I could have just renamed it to the Big East. I would have rather called it that, but they have some high rankings. It is really refreshing though as we go through all these conference standings like the Big 12 to see the top 25 teams spread throughout the entire country. And I think the most we've seen in one conference has been 4. Big 10 is going to tie that with Kansas State and Wisconsin up there. Missouri could also get in. Finally, we have Conference USA. Clearly it's not respected with Tennessee at 11-1 not even being ranked. But you need other teams in your conference to also be successful if you want to get ranked in this new environment. I think we're going to watch the Sun Belt Conference Championship because this feels like a playoff play-in. Georgia's currently 11-1, so they're not used to being ranked this low for having that record. But they completely blew out the Knights. They proved they deserve a spot in the playoffs, so they're going to get one. And we'll see if they're able to go all the way. A team like Penn State with a quarterback like Drew Aller could get in the way though. He won the Heisman. And my first thought at looking at this bracket, it seems like Texas Tech was able to remain undefeated. Now it's really hard to say whether or not it's impressive because their schedule could have been pretty weak, but we'll have to see how they do in the actual playoffs. And it's a shame that Boise State lost to Oregon by 1 in the Pac-12 championship. Conference championship losses though don't really seem to hurt teams. Kansas State drops 1 spot, Syracuse down 2 spots, and Boise State only down by 2. Now it is going to be the reason that Oklahoma didn't get in out of the Big 12, but they shouldn't have lost to Arkansas. And we should have spectated this game. It went into multiple overtimes. As for the best quarterback in the country, I don't think it was Drew Aller. I'd say it was probably Jackson Arnold. So playing for Oklahoma in the new Big 12 is not helping. And when it comes to the best running backs in the country, we have 2 D Taylors in the top 5. I wonder if they're brothers. Then we have Nick Singleton, Ollie Gordon II, and Dylan Sampson. Finally, at receiver, if you have an Oklahoma quarterback dominating, you're also going to have somebody up here like him. And going into the semifinals, we have Penn State and Syracuse meeting again. This is a huge matchup in the American Big East Conference because Penn State didn't even get into the conference championship where Pittsburgh beat Syracuse. And I'm very curious to see which of these teams makes it to the national championship. Unfortunately for us though, there was nothing close to see at the end. It was just another blowout. We have not had any luck in season number 2. But it makes sense. The Heisman winner had 5 touchdowns. At least it's going to leave us with a very interesting national championship game. And that's exactly what it's been. Penn State is trailing by 4 with a minute left. Now you might think this is an SEC versus Big 10 matchup, but it is not. It is a Sun Belt versus American Conference matchup, Penn State representing the American. But apparently their receiver didn't catch that ball, so it's 4th down and they hold on. They still have a fighting chance. 40 seconds left now, but they're going to take a sack. The American Conference, the Big East Conference, I'm going to call them the Big East Conference the rest of the video, has just a little bit of hope that they can have a national champion. But after that terrible 3rd down play, it is all in the hands of Drew Aller on 4th and 16, and he had no time. Georgia's going to get the Sun Belt their first championship. So now they are tied up with the MAC Conference, each one of them having 1. As we get farther into the future though, it's going to be very interesting to see if there's any small schools that can jump up here with some of the bigger programs. And you can tell that these conferences are having a toll on some of the recruiting classes already. Kentucky was at number 17 last year. Louisville is all the way down here at 93rd in the country. And when it comes to the Mountain West, once again, they're the only conference that doesn't have a single team with a top 25 class. That's going to affect teams in that conference now like Arizona State that lost their best running back to Oregon, and then also Dylan Raiola left Nebraska for Ohio State. I find that pretty odd since the Big 12 is currently ranked as the best conference in the country. But there's a decent chance that that's going to change over the course of season number 3. Maybe it won't though. Oklahoma's used the fuel of missing the playoffs by 1 spot to now be the number 1 team in the country, dominating their conference. And looking over to the American, Penn State has fallen off, but Pittsburgh and Syracuse are still pretty good. In the ACC, I think this is the first time that we've had 5 ranked teams from a conference, with Charlotte, James Madison, NC State, South Carolina up here with Clemson. And then in the Big Ten, despite losing their 5-star quarterback to the transfer portal, Nebraska's ranked in the top 15. Out in Conference USA, though, nobody seems to be doing pretty good, though Kentucky's in the conference championship. And this is what we've been waiting on. In the MAC conference, we have a Ball State team that is 12-0 undefeated, and they're probably the only undefeated team in the country. The Mountain West is pretty similar to Conference USA right now. Texas Tech couldn't repeat their undefeated regular season. And then in the Pac-12, we have Boise State, who is really emerging. They're the number 2 team in the country. Now, the SEC has had their struggles. Alabama's at 8-4. Tulane, Auburn, and LSU probably aren't ranked high enough to make the playoffs. But you never know. It could happen. And then in the Georgia-Florida Conference, Georgia Tech's in the conference championship. UCF's ranked in the top 10 at the mid part of the table. And with all that out of the way, I just realized I accidentally simmed through conference championship week, which stinks because I wanted to see Ball State stay undefeated. They lost to Notre Dame by 27 points. While once again, Oregon was just slightly better than Boise State. The Heisman winner is still going to come from the Broncos, though. It is Maddox Madsen. And Kellen Moore would be so proud, but we'll see how Boise State actually does in these playoffs. As for other dominant quarterbacks, you're going to see Kentucky's Cutter Boley up here, along with Marshall's Cole Pennington, and then Jake Strong and Brandon Rose. I can see that the tide's starting to turn in the smaller schools' favor. The best 3 running backs are coming from Ohio, East Carolina, and UNLV. And then receiving-wise, Marshall's Marcel Williams was at the top of this. Now, I can't sit here and say a small school made it to the semifinals, but Boise State did beat Nebraska. And I'm very curious if Oregon's going to be able to take down USC. If you look at their schedule from the season, you'll see they beat Boise State on the road, they beat the Trojans whenever they played them, and their only loss came at Washington. But the Pac-12's been very competitive, so no matter who wins this game, somebody's going to be representing them for the first time in the national championship. With a little over a minute left, it seems like Oregon is going to win this game, but they got the throwaway. And there's still the chance that the Trojans have a drive all the way down the field for the win. Now, those first 2 offensive plays did not look great. They also have no timeouts left, but they have all the time in the world to go deep down the field. And I figured they would have had a better plan than throwing it in the double coverage. They catch it off the deflection. That was 4th down. They dropped the ball. The game would have just been over if that player wasn't able to catch that right there. They have gotten the miracle they needed. But there's still a lot more work for them to do if they want to send this to overtime. They're sending it down the sidelines and it's swatted. It is crazy that they had a fluke play and that was the most successful thing they've done in the 6 we've watched until this. And it's saying that Jaden Mava's their quarterback. I'm pretty sure he transferred in from another school as well, so they don't have any of the guys they got a couple years ago. But guys like Jalen Daniels would have already graduated and that's going to be dropped. It is now 4th and 10, 27 seconds left. They get it out in time, but it's to no one. But good thing for USC fans, you're used to being disappointed. UCLA transfer Dante Moore has Oregon in the national championship, and it's against Oklahoma that beat Clemson 52-7 to get here. But before we finish the rest of this video, a word from Manscaped, today's video sponsor. The holiday season is here, and while you're busy giving gifts to everybody else, don't forget to treat yourself too. Your grooming game deserves the ultimate self-care experience with the Performance Package 5.0 from Manscaped. Starting with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, it is 2 of these interchangeable, skin-safe blade heads so you can trim worry-free without the risk of cuts or nicks. It's also waterproof, allowing you to groom in the shower, and there's even an LED spotlight to see better. It includes 3 length-setting combs, a travel lock right on here so it doesn't power on whenever it's in your luggage, and effortless charging with the fast USB-C port, keeping it ready for whenever you need it. Also included in the kit, the Weed Whacker 2.0, which is one of my favorites because it gets both my ear hairs and my nose hairs. Not only is it waterproof, but it is the same skin-safe technology that the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra has, and a lot more comes in the kit, like the Crop Soother Ball aftershave lotion, which means you can say goodbye to razor burns and itching. You also get the Crop Preserver, which is a quick absorbing lotion that is very soothing for your undercarriage. And there is still more. There's 2 free gifts, these Boxers 2.0, and then of course the Shed 2.0 travel bag, which will hold all of your grooming essentials. Now, if you use my promo code BORD, you'll get 20% off plus free international shipping at checkout, and that's 20% off plus free shipping for a sweet holiday gift or treat whenever you use code BORD at manscaped.com/Bordeaux. But now it's time to get back to the rest of this video. We're getting ourselves a Pac-12 versus Big 12 matchup, and I think you have to wonder what has happened to Jackson Arnold. He's thrown an interception here. They've only scored 6 points in this game, and Oregon is about to make it even worse as he can't catch him. Last season, Jackson Arnold was one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and he got Oklahoma this far, so he couldn't have been that terrible, but he just didn't show up for this game. The Pac-12 is now the 3rd conference to get themselves a national championship, and I think we're starting to see a little bit of a shift with the top classes. Missouri's not even ranked. They're in the top 5. You have Syracuse up here in the top 10. Pittsburgh's up here, Wisconsin, Nebraska, and most importantly, Boise State is getting a top 25 one. Now, I will say there are signs that conferences like the ACC are going to fall off whenever you have this big of a drop-off to the other schools. And even the MAC has started to affect Ohio State and Michigan as they're finishing outside of the top 25. The Mountain West still has their issues, but we'll see if they can ever recover from it. And the conference rankings haven't gotten too much movement yet, but the SEC has fallen down to number 6. The ACC is going to be slipping very soon though. They didn't have any teams finish better than 8-4 besides Clemson, who's barely ranked inside the top 25. And then out in the new Big East, we have Penn State and Pittsburgh up at the top, but besides that, everybody else is still pretty average. Even the Big 12's top heavy. Oklahoma's up top, Texas is ranked, but they've not had much success on this sim. And if the Big 10 only has 2 ranked teams as well, with Purdue somehow starting to stand out, who is getting ranked? It might be coming from Conference USA. My Kentucky Wildcats are not up there, but Tennessee and Virginia Tech are probably playing for a playoff spot. And then in the MAC conference, we have Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan up at the top, but Notre Dame's the only one that's ranked. Michigan State near the bottom again. And I can't believe what I'm seeing. The Mountain West Conference has not one team ranked in the top 25, but 2 of them going into conference championship week. With only a few conferences left though, we had to figure the Pac-12 would be up here with a lot of top ranked teams. Stanford is actually starting to do a lot better than they normally do. And then in the SEC, Jacksonville State might be one of the smaller schools that's on the come up, that's having a bit of success, while Alabama is down here at 5-7. Finally, we have the Sun Belt, which might be the best conference, with Miami, USF, Florida, Georgia, and even Kennesaw State all ranked in the top 25. All of that's going to leave us with multiple interesting conference championship games. I want to see if USF is able to take down Miami. I want to see if Jacksonville State can beat Ole Miss. And I think it's safe to assume that right now the Rebels have a playoff spot on the line. If SEC fans want to see their conference have any success, Ole Miss has to win this. But I don't think that's going to happen. They're currently trailing by 11 points to Jacksonville State, and they're going down in bounds. If they don't pick up this 4th and 7, the Gamecocks are about to win the SEC championship, but that's not happening yet. Now, Ole Miss still has a ton of work to do if they want to come back, but they have a receiver wide open going to the end zone. And on the 2-point conversion, they hand it off, but it's going to be short. No matter what though, they need this onside kick to go in their favor, and Jacksonville State's going to do it. They might not be a playoff team, but they're getting their first little taste of success. And my hope is that USF can do the same in the Sun Belt Conference Championship. They are at a significant disadvantage though since Miami gets to host it, which makes it very shocking. They have only been able to score 3 points in this game, and they're not getting that play either. USF didn't just beat the Hurricanes, they dominated 29-3, but it definitely wasn't through the air. It was pretty much all on the ground. Now with some of these other results, there's still a chance that USF doesn't get in. Tennessee also won, so they're trying to get that auto bid for being a conference champion. But only the 5 highest ranked conference champions get that luxury, and Eli won the Heisman with 23 touchdowns. I know that Pittsburgh's ranked as the #1 team in the country, but we're going to look at the national stats. That doesn't even make any sense to me. But to be fair to him, those stats did not include his 700 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. He also put Pittsburgh in a good spot, while Coastal Carolina under Hudson's leads not really anywhere great, and then James Madison and Kent State's quarterbacks just turned it over so much. That's a lot of small schools up there leading the stats though, and then when it comes to rushing, Syracuse is still putting up good numbers. While on the receiving side of things, you're not going to see anybody in the top 7 that comes from a program that's normally one of the best ones. It is time to take a look at this playoff bracket though to see who gets in. Tennessee didn't, USF didn't, but Florida got that final auto bid. Once the quarterfinals rolled around though, it's interesting to see that Utah out of the Mountain West can stay undefeated. And going into the semifinals, they're playing Pittsburgh, while on the other side of the bracket, we have Purdue and Oklahoma back for more revenge. I think we have to see if Purdue can make it to the national championship. They've been starting to shine out of the Big Ten. And if they can keep this up, they might be a powerhouse, because I'm not sure if anybody else in this conference besides maybe Nebraska can keep up with them. Missouri had a top 5 class recently too, so we'll keep an eye on the Tigers as well. But if you're rooting for the Boilermakers, I have some really bad news. At one point, they had like a 17-0 lead. And now with less than a minute left, they find themselves down by 6 with throwing an interception to Oklahoma to lose this game. Their collapse started in the 2nd and 3rd quarters, but it didn't come to fruition until the 4th. And this means Oklahoma's going to have another chance at winning a championship. They'll be representing the Big 12, while it's Utah that's representing the Mountain West. And the reason that they're still ranked so low is it's not like any of the wins on their schedule have been that impressive. They have a real chance to prove themselves against the Sooners though. And I think they're just glad that they're not getting blown out, but they have a real shot at winning this championship. They're chucking up a prayer with about a minute left, and he almost caught it. Right now, the undefeated season is on the line. They still have all 3 of their timeouts left. They are slinging it down the field, and they have a touchdown. The Utes are trying their best to carry the Mountain West Conference, but that only gives them a 1-point lead. There's still plenty of time for Oklahoma to respond, so they need to punch this in. The pressure is now on for Michael Hawkins Jr. He gets this one out for 5. But right now, it's looking like the Sooners are going to lose lose back-to-back national championships. Everybody in the Big 12 conference is relying on them. It seems like they could get to field goal range, but it's a little concerning they've already used all 3 of their timeouts and they get this one out just in time. If Utah can force 1 sack, this championship is probably over. Michael Hawkins is going to throw it away again. And they're almost running out of time to pick up 15 yards and spike the ball to kick a field goal, so they needed to get out of bounds, but Utah played it perfectly. They knew exactly where Oklahoma wanted to go, and now they've gotten the Mountain West a championship. This is the first 16-0 undefeated season that we have seen so far. And wide receiver David Washington is the reason Utah's taken it home. Their legacy, Jacksonville State's legacy, and even Stanford's success is going to have a hard time repeating itself though because of how low they're ranked. At least when it comes to the recruiting classes, and Clemson has the #1 class, but they've done nothing out of the ACC. From this point forward, I think Michigan's going to continue to go downhill, so they're probably not repeating their national championship. But the Mountain West Conference signed a top 25 class for the first time in 4 seasons. I also think it's very important to note some of the shifts we're starting to see. Penn State's class ranking is dropping. Alabama's down here at number 29, Florida State 33. And you know the Wolverines are starting to drown whenever 3 of the top 7 players in the transfer portal all came from Michigan. The MAC conference simply isn't deep enough though to have a high conference ranking, and you can see the ACC is starting to really drop. Just after saying that though, going into conference championship week, they have an undefeated team. NC State's also ranked inside the top 10. And in the Big East American Conference, it's the same 3 teams that stay ranked up here. It's Pittsburgh, Syracuse, and Penn State. The Big 12 has also been known for Oklahoma's consistency, while everybody else, including Texas, just can't get ranked. Rice is up here though in the conference championship. And then in the Big 10, we have Nebraska as the #1 team in the country. We have Kansas State playing well. Purdue still up here. Missouri as well. But what I was not expecting out of Conference USA was 2 top 16 teams, with none of them being Virginia Tech, Tennessee, Louisville, or Kentucky. No, it's Marshall and Western Kentucky. We're going to watch that one for sure. In the MAC Conference Championship, instead of Michigan being there, it's Kent State against Notre Dame. And then the Mountain West seems to be doing a lot better now. We have UNLV still ranked in the top 25. Utah went 9-3. While in the Pac-12, at the very top is Boise State. They're starting to really stand out here. We're only at the midway point in this video as well, but Alabama's not ranked at 9-3. Instead, you have Auburn and Louisiana Tech at the top of the SEC standings. Yes, Louisiana Tech went undefeated in SEC play. And the chaos doesn't necessarily continue in the Florida-Georgia Conference, but Florida State could knock the Bulldogs out of the playoffs with a win. That was a lot to go over, but I have to see who wins between Marshall and Western Kentucky, and also between Louisiana Tech and Auburn. These are probably for playoff spots. But then again, thinking about it, Conference USA is not that respected, so they probably won't get one of these teams in. With that in mind, we're just going to check out the SEC one. Louisiana Tech has to stay undefeated in conference play. But they couldn't. They got blown out 47-14, and I have no idea how the Bulldogs even went 9-0 there in the first place. We have to check out their team schedule after that. And funny enough, they did play at Auburn and blew them out, so then they just got blown out. They also won at Ole Miss on the road. I'm not sure what happened in that game. Their quarterback, who I don't even want to try to pronounce his name, Sagan, just didn't perform. And even though Nebraska lost Dylan Raiola, they've just developed another Heisman-winning quarterback. We have to talk about the 5 auto bids though. Western Kentucky flew up to number 6 in the rankings after beating Marshall by 22, so they're definitely going to be in the playoffs. And Kent State might not be getting in while Notre Dame still will, but they can take pride in the fact that they won the MAC Conference Championship. Boise State also took down USC since they didn't have to play Oregon for the Pac-12 one. And we have multiple smaller programs to keep an eye on as we sim to the semifinals. Western Kentucky ended up making it past the first round, but then they lost to undefeated North Carolina. And Boise State just beat Notre Dame by 3 points, but they have to play Oregon, which is not good for them. This is the one Pac-12 team that they just can't seem to beat. And this final minute and a half is about to be super interesting. They get the first down. That actually puts the Ducks in a bad spot, because if Boise State wants to, they can run out a lot of clock versus Oregon, though they're going for a touchdown. I don't know why they do that. Now Oregon has a chance to get a touchdown and then they could win the game, but Boise State gets the interception. They're going to beat the Ducks. They have finally done it. We have finally seen a Boise State team that's better than Oregon, and they might just win the Pac-12 another championship. Now, I think I forgot to check out some of the national stat leaders, but Boise State's quarterback is not up here, and neither is their running back, so they've just won a lot of games by being good, I guess. Michigan's running back had the best season by far. And then from a receiving perspective, it's nice to see Louisiana Tech still as a player up here, but LSU had a kid with 20 receiving touchdowns. It is time for the national championship though. North Carolina has still not lost a single game. And what's interesting is before we hop into this, we can see in the top right corner that their coach is about to go to Arkansas after this season. I don't understand why he'd leave them. Arkansas is in the Big 12 going 3-9. So if he's going to take home that national championship trophy, it's now or never. I'd say say it's looking decent for the Tar Heels. They have a 4-point lead with exactly a minute left on the clock, and Boise State's quarterback throws it away. But their defense is going to have to play that good for a little bit longer, and they are. That is a hard sack to come back from. It is now 3rd and 16, and Boise State almost completed it. But there was no separation there. The national championship is on the line for the Broncos. They've made it this far. They might never have this chance again. And that's when their quarterback decided to miss a throw. It's still a shock that even North Carolina is winning it all. This isn't basketball. But it would have been so cool to see Boise State get it. And halfway through this video, we've not had a single conference win more than one championship. We'll have to see if that coach can turn around Arkansas as well. They just signed a top 25 class. Up at the top of these rankings, we have Oklahoma. And it feels like in Conference USA, it's only a matter of time before Tennessee, Kentucky, or Virginia Tech's decent. Following Utah's national championship, though, the Mountain West is starting to take a big step back in recruiting. And I really don't like to see one of Kentucky's best players transferring to Ohio State. We're at the halfway point of this video now, though, and the ACC is starting to climb their way back up. So we'll see if they have more success in season number 6. Most of the schools with Carolina in their name really struggled, though. Even North Carolina, they lost their head coach. Up here at the top, though, we have one team that's ranked, NC State in the ACC. And finally, in the Big East, it's not Pittsburgh, Syracuse, or Penn State that's at the top of the conference. It is UMass at number 10. The Big 12 has also been shaken up. Not only is Oklahoma here, but we have Houston, we have Texas, we have Oklahoma State. And we haven't seen 3 top 5 teams in a conference yet, but the Big 10 has that at the moment. Then, to my surprise, Kentucky comes in at 11-1. They might be 12-0 if they didn't lose that left end to Ohio State, but they're not really ranked high. And Kent State's season might not have been a fluke. They're playing Notre Dame in the MAC championship again. The Mountain West is also pretty interesting. We have Colorado State and Colorado, these rivals facing off in that game. And then we have Oregon and Washington for the Pac-12 championship, while USC's on the sidelines and Boise State's barely inside the top 20. Alabama fans will be happy to see that they've started to have a little bit of success again. They're going to be playing LSU. And then in the Sun Belt, Miami and Florida have made it. Georgia's just outside of it, and no one else is ranked. It seems like kind of a weird season, but I would like to think that this UMass-Pittsburgh game is for a spot in the playoffs. And having another team like the Minutemen that could be good is exactly what the American needed. This is the game that I want to see the result of, the Big East Conference Championship. It's being played in the snow, and I've been waiting to see something like this. I hate to say it though, UMass just couldn't keep up with Pitt. They scored a touchdown at the end to try and make it look a little closer, but in the end, they're not going to be the ones celebrating with that trophy. As for other news, USC's quarterback won the Heisman despite not playing in the Pac-12 championship, and I'm not sure how, because Alabama's quarterback definitely had better stats, while Kent State's always throws a ton of interceptions. They keep on being up there though in those rankings. Rushing yard wise, Kentucky had the best running back. And then from a receiving perspective, the guys that have the most touchdowns, 3 of the top 4 receivers, all come from the SEC. Unfortunately for that conference though, they're not putting a single team into the playoffs. Alabama beating LSU 44-14 didn't really help them. As for other interesting results, Notre Dame got revenge against Kent State and Houston beat Oklahoma. That leaves us with this bracket right here, and UMass got an at-large bid. Now they got obliterated in the first round by Wisconsin, but a playoff game should still help their team prestige. And it's not like the Badgers were terrible this season. They're currently in the national championship game. This is what the Big Ten's been waiting for. They could win their first championship as a conference. Because if you remember Michigan winning it all, you have to keep in mind they're currently in the MAC, not the Big Ten. Now their championship is all in the hands of Wisconsin's defense. Because with a little more than a minute left, Washington's down by 6. They have the ball. We'll see if they're able to do anything with this drive. But I can't lie, right now it's not looking too good for them. It's 3rd and 17. They are sending up a prayer right here, and they're going to connect with the receiver. Wisconsin is choking the national championship. They didn't have the speed to keep up with him right there. And this extra point would put the Huskies in front. Now the Badgers need to get in field goal range. But after a not so great kickoff return, they probably need to pick up about 45 to 50 yards, and instead they've thrown an interception to Washington. What are they doing? The Badgers are currently choking so hard, and I don't think we've ever seen a team collapse like this. They still have a fighting chance though, even if they do get in, because that only puts Washington up by 8. It's weird to think that 30 seconds ago it was 20-14, and Wisconsin had Washington on like a 3rd and 17. Now they're down by 8 points. They still have all 3 of their timeouts left though. Even though they're not using them, they're wasting the time. There's now 20 seconds left because they didn't just hike the football, and their quarterback is trying to scramble. The Pac-12 is about to get their second national championship in this video unless Wisconsin pulls off a miracle. But the Badgers quarterback isn't scrambling even though he is stepping up to run it, and they caught the ball. Maybe they do still have a slight chance if they throw up this Hail Mary and get super lucky. I'm not sure what he's doing facing that direction, but he turns around, he slings it, and it goes all the way to the end zone, but they dropped it. I promise that ball was in the hands of a Wisconsin receiver. We're going to watch it back. And if you're a Washington fan, fan, you can be relieved that he somehow didn't catch it. I will credit the Huskies defense right here for hitting him pretty hard. And what a redemption run for the Huskies after losing the conference championship to Oregon. The Ducks always have a good recruiting class though, so they'll be fine. I've actually been surprised how many times Auburn's been up here and they've had no success. But here's something new that caught me off guard. Fresno State just signed the 13th best class in the country. That is a smaller school that's in the Pac-12 that's starting to reap the benefits of the conference being so good. They even got themselves a 4-star quarterback. And I think the Mountain West recruiting classes just keep on getting worse. The best one was 54th. It's pretty simple though. No matter the rank of your team's conference, if you go undefeated, you will be in the playoffs, and I'm pretty surprised that the Pac-12's down there at number 3. That might have been an accurate assessment of the conference though. This season, Washington went 5-7, Boise State's not ranked, and Oregon and USC are 1-2, but that's about it. That's a huge conference championship game though. In the SEC, we have 2 11-1 teams, but one of them is Louisiana. LSU wishes that was them, and I kind of feel bad for most of the schools at the bottom of all the conferences because they've been the same ones pretty much every season. Going 3-9 this year for Florida State is all their fault though, nobody else's. Up here at the top of the Sun Belt, USF is ranked, but Georgia and Miami will play in the conference championship. And that's for a playoff spot, so we'll spectate that for sure. In the ACC, NC State is literally the only ranked team. And UMass might have gone 8-4 this time around in the American, but Pittsburgh's not ranked, Syracuse is not ranked, so now we have UConn and Boston College up here with Penn State. That conference seems to be getting better and better. Oklahoma still near the top, Texas A&M finally doing well, and is that Arkansas inside the top 10? They're a playoff lock since they're not in the conference championship. In the Big Ten, Kansas State's up here. Missouri is 7-5 in the game, but that's because there's a 5-way tiebreaker and they've somehow gotten second place. We still have a few more conferences though. In Conference USA, if Tennessee just beats Appalachian State, this conference will finally put a team in the playoffs. And then Michigan State's having success in the MAC, but they're going to have to beat Notre Dame if they want a shot at the playoffs. Ohio State's ranked a little higher. Finally, we have the Mountain West Conference. BYU would probably be in playoff contention if they just won one more game. And not only am I interested to see Georgia and Miami, but we also have to see if Louisiana can beat Auburn. We'll start with this one, and Georgia's already been able to win a national championship, but they could definitely do it again with the team they currently have if they beat Miami. Now, we've seen the Hurricanes play in this situation before at home. They beat USF. They just dominated against the Bulldogs, but somehow they caught that touchdown on the final play. It doesn't help them at all, but I've been stuck in this screen for like 5 minutes now, so you don't get to see Miami celebrate, but they are going to win that game. As for the SEC championship, Louisiana is definitely the underdog on paper, and it's almost like all of those top 5 recruiting classes for Auburn are paying off. They have not played their best against the Ragin' Cajuns though. They're currently only up by 7, and Ladarius Fort is so close to leading his team to tying this one up. They got to fight their way in. If they do get a touchdown though, they're going to give the Tigers plenty of time, and I'm not sure why he didn't throw the ball away. Now it's 3rd and goal from the 14. Ladarius Fort better start dialing up some dots right here. No, he's going to scramble. He's trying to run for it himself, and he makes it there. Louisiana will be leaning on their defense, but right now there's a chance they make it all the way to the playoffs. And it all starts with a defensive stop. They're going to have to force them to a 3-and-out. The Tigers really don't need that much. They're continuing to throw it quickly, and their quarterback DeAndre Easter's already thrown for over 350 yards in this game. Now he's the one that's going to continue to dissect the defense. Louisiana needs to get a sack right here. Instead, they gave up the flat. And I know that most of us are rooting for the underdog, but I don't think Louisiana's going to win. They can't really do too much from here, especially since Auburn is clearly just setting up to kick a field goal. You have to wonder though if the Tigers are going to manage this clock correctly, and I think they have. A 40-yard kick is going to win it for them, and that seems like it is going to go in. I'm disappointed for Louisiana because just like Jacksonville State, they'll probably fall off after making it this far. But you never know. Maybe there's still a chance that they get into the playoffs. Once again, the Heisman Trophy is going to go to a USC quarterback, and it makes sense. He only had 2 interceptions. Kent State doesn't have somebody up here like they have been, but the rushing attacks nationwide are probably at its weakest compared to all the other seasons. The Ragin' Cajuns had a receiver in the top 3 alongside Purdue and Clemson, but you all probably care about the conference championship winners, where Notre Dame did beat Michigan State 26-0, but they barely moved up any in the rankings. Also, Louisiana's loss clearly didn't cost them, while for NC State and Kansas State, losing their conference championships probably did. Never mind, both of them barely got in, and I'm interested to see how far Arkansas can go. I'd also like to point out, it's becoming very clear if you want to make the playoffs from the MAC conference, you can only lose 1 game because of how weak it is depth-wise. And looking at this bracket, we have a championship matchup between undefeated USC and Miami. Tennessee couldn't make it past the first round since they played the Hurricanes, despite representing Conference USA for the first time. And Louisiana lost in the first round to Georgia, so that's another close one that they couldn't pull out. What's important though is this game right here. The Sun Belt has one championship, the Pac-12 already has two. And if the Trojans can win this game, that conference is going to easily be on pace to have the most. Miami is doing everything they can to stop that from happening though. They're on the 1 yard line, they scramble in, and with a minute left in this game, they just took a 3-point lead. With 56 seconds left, there is nothing better than the lefty Heisman having the ball in his hands with a chance to at least tie this game. But I think Alex Redmond's going for a touchdown. He doesn't want just a field goal here, and USC's breaking a tackle. Miami's defense better start to show up soon. They're going to sling it to that right side. And that was some pretty good lockdown D, though this RPO is going to work for basically a first. Now it is 3rd and inches. All they have to do is get a little bit of yardage here, and they do. But time's starting to run off of the clock, so they could settle for a field goal, and we could have an overtime game. After burning their final timeout, USC is just kicking with 20 seconds left. And that gives Miami a slight opportunity to avoid OT. Now, I'm sure they're not going to risk throwing an interception. They're just going to hand it off, but if they break off this run, that'd be interesting. And here we go. It is the second national championship that's gone to overtime. On 1st and 10, we're going to see if Miami can pick up anything here or if they're going to take a sack. No, he stayed up and then still went down. But they still have a couple opportunities to get more than a field goal out of this drive. The odds are not stacked in their favor though, now that it is 3rd and 11 and they still get enough. Kevin Hoke has thrown for over 300 yards, 4 touchdowns in this game. So you have to wonder, why even try to hand it off? Just let him throw the football. The Trojans have been put in a tough position. And even if they do score here, no matter what, they're going to have to put together back-to-back good drives. They're breaking that first tackle attempt, which is super helpful. And this is truly the matchup between two of the best teams in the country. I'm glad that we got this. Miami's ranking seems a little low for what it should be, but the Sun Belt hasn't gotten much respect. But they could if they win this championship. It's just not happening yet. The Trojans are about to get the ball back again though, assuming they didn't go for the 2-point conversion, and they didn't. We'll see what they can come up with right here with their Heisman winning quarterback. Maybe an undefeated season, but I don't think that pass was worth it right there. It could have been intercepted, and now he's going down. You do not want to get held to a field goal right here. They have no choice but to have success, and he isn't going to get enough. With this kick right here, Miami can now win it with a touchdown. This would be big for the conference's competition in national championship winners, and they have it on the first play. Now the Sun Belt's going to have themselves 2 national championships tied with the Pac-12. And then you have the MAC Conference, the Mountain West Conference, and the ACC all with 1. After they beat Georgia the way that they did, we should have known that Kevin Hoke was going to go off. And what I find to be interesting is with 3 years left in this, there's not been a single team that's won 2 national championships, but Miami could. They just signed the #1 class. I also need to give a little bit of credit to Sam Houston out of the Big 12. They signed a top 25 one. And I can't believe how far Ohio State's continued to fall. They're down here at 39. Of course, out in the Mountain West, it's not much better out there. 40, 51, 55. And even the Sun Belt's generating some interesting results with Florida State down here at 74. A team we should probably keep an eye on next year's Nebraska because they signed the top offensive and the top defensive transfer. But the biggest issue for them is they play in the Big Ten Conference, which is ranked #2, but it's nice to see the Pac-12 has jumped up to #1. It's probably going to stay that way as well because even with Oregon having an 8-4 season, you have Boise State at #2 in the country, Stanford at #3. While in other conferences like the SEC, going 10-2 means you're barely inside the top 10. Alabama made the conference championship at 7-5. And then in the Sun Belt, Miami's 8-4, and their only chance at getting a team into the playoffs is if Georgia gets lucky. Out in the ACC, we have Clemson. That is the only team ranked out here. NC State could beat them to knock them out of the playoffs. And then in the American Conference, you're going to see that Boston College and Syracuse are at the top, number 14 at 8-4. There's been too many struggles across the country. Arkansas 7-5. This is the first time Texas is even inside the top 10. But then we made it to the Big Ten, another conference that's seen very highly. So you have the number 4 team and the number 6 team at 9-3 ranked that high. You compare that to Conference USA, where both Marshall, Kentucky, and even Tennessee are 9-3, but they're ranked a lot lower. And then we have the MAC Conference. Both Ohio State and Michigan State went 10-2, but one of them's ranked a lot higher than the other. Kent State and Ball State also up here. So all of that leaves us with the Mountain West Conference, 2 11-1 teams, and a chance if Texas Tech wins the conference championship at 2 playoff teams. Now that's one of the games for conference championship week that we have got to spectate, but I also want to see the Red River rivalry in the Big 12. If Oklahoma pulls this off, they're going to ruin Texas's playoff hopes, and they have the roster to do it. The Sooners even have a 2-point lead with 50 seconds left, but Texas only needs a field goal to win. Now Thomas Alfonso, the Longhorns quarterback, has thrown 2 picks, so this is on him. One less turnover, and they're probably winning this game, going on to the playoffs. but Oklahoma's going to force their third pick of this game now. And you knew that was happening the second that ball just popped up in the air. It is no question that the Big 12 has simply run through Oklahoma, and we're about to see whether or not the Mountain West runs through Texas Tech. They deserve to be ranked where they're at right now, though, even at 11-1, because they lost by 37 to Colorado State. They haven't beaten a ranked team all season or played BYU, so it's on them to prove themselves against the Cougars. They ended up doing exactly that, going into their stadium and winning this game 20-3. So it'll be interesting to see if both of those teams make the playoffs. Before this game, BYU's only loss was to number 3 Stanford, and I think they're both deserving, but let's talk about Purdue's quarterback throwing for 49 touchdowns and almost 4,000 yards to win the Heisman. These are some of the better quarterback stat lines that we've seen so far. The only thing that caused Kansas State's quarterback to not win it was he didn't throw for as many touchdowns. And on the rushing side of things, that's how Texas Tech dominates games. It always blows my mind how many receiving touchdowns some of the top receivers have, though. This Kansas State receiver had 22. And you all can see the updated rankings with some of these results. I find it funny that the only game that wasn't on TV nationally was the SEC championship. I have no idea how that's happened. But from the looks of it, there's been some huge movement in the polls to get the playoff bracket looking like this. Michigan State didn't even play a game, but they went up from number 15 to number 10 just to get in. There's been some other movement like Texas Tech up to number 6. And as we go into the semifinals, for the first time, I think I want to hop into both of these games and see what happens. Kansas State's the only undefeated team left in the country, while Texas Tech just won the Mountain West, and then Boise State's going to try and take on Ohio State. So these games should be interesting, and remember, it's now the Mountain West versus the Big 10. It's a little confusing considering both of those colleges play in the Big 12 in real life. And right now, Kansas State is going to be able to survive, protecting their undefeated season if they get one more stop. You never know, though. If Texas Tech scores a touchdown, maybe they'll go for the 2-point conversion. That can't happen if they're throwing an interception. And they aren't technically out of it yet since they still have timeouts. But they just made it way harder on themselves to make it to the national championship, and they might just give up the first down right here. There's no run D. For a team that runs the ball so much, you would think that they would know how to stop the run. But Rico just took off there, and now he's in the championship. As for Ohio State and Boise State, they're fighting for the other spot, but to my surprise, the Buckeyes are a lower overall team than the Broncos. And Boise State's clearly benefited off of being in the Pac-12. If Ohio State doesn't pick this up, the game's over. That's going to keep them in it for a little bit longer, though, so we're going to have to keep an eye on them just in case they score a touchdown. I would hate to see the Broncos choke a 14-point lead with less than 2 minutes left, but it's definitely a possibility. They're giving up a touchdown. And Ohio State still has all 3 of their timeouts left. Now, all it's going to take for Boise State to seal their win is 1 first down, so that's what they're going for. But their running back hasn't exactly had the best luck in this game, and it's going to be a 3rd and 2. Boise State could be going back to the national championship as they're throwing it, they're not running it. And now they're out there in victory formation. We're about to have a really good game between them and Kansas State. And the Wildcats are going to have a really hard time stopping Kevin, who had one of the best performances of this entire video. This is the type of win that would really elevate the Broncos to the next level. But undefeated Kansas State standing in their way could be an issue. Either the Pac-12 gets their 3rd championship or the Big 12 gets their 1st. And the Big 12 certainly had their chances. Oklahoma's already lost in this spot twice. Unfortunately for Kansas State, though, they're in a very similar position to what Ohio State just was, because they find themselves down by 2 possessions with less than 2 minutes left, and they're just running backwards to throw it away. It is really important that they save all 3 of those timeouts here. And it is now 3rd and goal. The Broncos defense is going to be coming in hot, but never mind. They had all the time in the world to throw an interception straight to them. Boise State can celebrate. They're about to win it all. And the Broncos have actually done it. I wasn't sure if they'd ever pull it off. Between this video and the promotion and relegation video, we have seen them come so close to a championship numerous times. And this is proof it doesn't always take the number 1 class in order to get it done, but Boise State's classes have continued to improve up to 16th best in the country. Then we have Auburn, who has been dominating the SEC, while teams like LSU are down here at 41st, Ole Miss at 50. And Texas Tech might be what saves the Mountain West Conference. They signed 2 5-stars this season. I feel like nationally, the top 10 classes have looked pretty different than what I'd expect out of real life. And the number 1 player in the portal, a running back, went from Oklahoma State to Oklahoma, their rivals, so that's a huge deal. I'm starting to realize I have no idea how these rankings work, though, because the Pac-12 dropped down to number 3 for conferences, and the Sun Belt's at 9, even though they've won 2 championships. Now, I feel like as of recently, the ACCs look the exact same. They have one team that's ranked super high at the top, and every other team in the conference is down here unranked, which is something I've gotten sick of seeing, but Penn State and Pittsburgh in the American Conference Championship is certainly interesting. Then we have the Big 12, where they have 6 teams ranked inside the top 25. That's the first time this has happened throughout this entire video. And the Big 10 has an undefeated Kansas State team again, but they're going to have to play against Nebraska, who's 9-3 but ranked 5th. if. As for Conference USA, Cincinnati could be a playoff team if Kentucky doesn't beat them. Marshall's also ranked pretty highly. They've been doing this recently. But the MAC is not looking too good. Ohio State's the only team in here that has any chance at the playoffs. New Mexico's a new name in the Mountain West Conference, though. They're 11-1. They're ranked 21st, though. Colorado State's 25. And then in the Pac-12, reigning national champions Boise State, 11-1. They're going to play Washington. While in the SEC, we have Tulane and UAB fighting for a playoff spot. Not LSU, not Auburn, who's been signing top 3 classes this entire video, and not Alabama, who is 4-8 at the bottom of the SEC. Finally, we're left with the Sun Belt. Georgia is undefeated, though they're ranked 4th in the country. USF could knock them off, but that's pretty unlikely, and there's clearly some Pac-12, Big 12 bias with Nebraska and Oregon ranked above all these other schools, though how is Oregon above Boise State? They're in the same conference. I mean, the Broncos won at USC. They ended up taking down Washington. They won at number 6 Oregon, so they should definitely be ranked higher, though UCLA beat them by 3 last week. And I'm not sure if Boise State makes the playoffs if they don't win this conference championship game. I'd also like to check out UAB and Tulane in the SEC, but I'd rather check out Arkansas and Texas. This is where North Carolina's old head coach is at, who won them a championship. But we're still starting with Boise State. They could be the first team to go back-to-back. Assuming they get a stop on this 4th and 20, that means they're gonna win the conference championship. They're taking the Pac-12. This interception is gonna do it, and they're gonna probably return it to make the score even worse. Boise State has become an elite program, and they're one of the main reasons that the Pac-12's been this dominant. Their quarterback this season has the name of St. John, so they have a new guy that's starting there, but he's gotten them to a good spot, and maybe this year Texas can win the Big 12. I have some bad news for Longhorn fans, though. It might look like it's a tie game, and it is. You're not blind, but they blew a 21-0 lead. Thomas Alfonso is still the Texas quarterback. He's thrown 2 interceptions in this conference championship too, and there's a lot of pressure on him right now because the Longhorns have not scored a single point in this second half. Texas might be really unlucky. After taking that sack, they need to have a completion. They get one, but if they don't pick up this 3rd and 9, they're punting the ball back to Arkansas, and they get it. That's gonna put the Longhorns in a spot to just seal this game versus the Razorbacks. There's nothing that can be done about it now. They're about to pick up the 1st down, and even if they didn't, they could run the clock all the way down where they are going to drill this. Arkansas players look so disappointed, but they had a good comeback, and they've been punished by losing that game, dropping out of the playoff race, though Cincinnati lost to Kentucky, so they also can't get in. As for our Heisman winner, this might be the first receiver of the video. It's Kansas State. But we've seen far better receiving seasons than this touchdown-wise, at least in this video. Even guys like Danny had 20 of them. That's kind of the outcome, though, whenever you have the leading passer in the country. 47 touchdowns, 11 picks probably cost him the Heisman. And we can talk about the rushers real quick, but I want to go back to the leading passer in the country, Rico. This was Kansas State's quarterback last season that took them all the way to the national championship and then lost while being undefeated. So you know he's going to be looking for revenge this time around. They even beat Nebraska by 17. I should also point out that USF beat Georgia in the Sun Belt Conference Championship, but Georgia's still in the playoffs. And it's probably because so many other teams also lost that week, but we have some great first-round matchups. By the quarterfinals, though, there was a blowout like Oregon losing by 24 points to Boise State. That would not have happened a few seasons ago. Just looking at this bracket, if Kansas State and the Broncos win, we could have a national championship rematch. But there's a team with 4 losses that stands in the way of making that happen. Nebraska comes in at an 86 overall, only 1 lower. But I think the odds of both Boise State and Kansas State winning their semifinal matchups are pretty small. A new face at quarterback was all it took to mess up Boise State. They're down by 10 on this final play. They simply can't win. And we actually have a 4-loss team that is moving on to the championship. I mean, they're clearly pretty good if they've been able to get this far, but it just blows my mind that they even made the playoffs in the first place. And now we have to follow Kansas State's story to see if they can stay undefeated. There is something so confusing about the fact that this game is 6-6 though, because there's a minute and a half left. The Wildcats have the Heisman winning quarterback who's been incredible. And right now they're in a position where if their defense doesn't step up, they're going to lose this game, and they're generating no pressure on the defensive line. They got to force a fumble. I think we're going to overtime. Defense has clearly been everything in this game. Kansas State's going to snag the interception though, and they're in field goal range automatically. You can see how they've gone undefeated for the 2nd season in a row. And this would be one of the greatest runs ever for them if they didn't lose that last championship to Boise State. They haven't even solidified their win in this game though, because it's 3rd and 10 and they're not getting it. Washington's gonna have a chance to respond back to the field goal. And it took Kansas State 9 years of playing in the Big Ten, but they're finally playing offense like a Big Ten West team would have. It's gonna be super heartbreaking if they give up a touchdown in this time frame though. And I'm not sure why Washington's tight end just fell down in bounds. He is not making it any easier on the Huskies, who are also from the Pac-12. The Pac-12 keeps on sending teams far down. I mean, he had all the time in the world to find a receiver, and Kansas State had a couple defenders back. Now, the real question is, since it's a first down, they should be able to get up to the line and spike the ball here. Will they do it quick enough, though? And they barely did. There's just a second left on the clock, and the kick is going to send it to OT. I really thought Kansas State was about to win it with that huge play. I didn't see the other defenders on the screen. And after getting that sack, their defense might still be able to clutch this one up for them. You kind of have to give them that soft D on 3rd and 16, so you don't give that up. But they didn't drop players back where they needed to in coverage, and now they're probably going to give up a touchdown. Even if the other semifinal game wasn't too good, this has been a super solid one. And Kansas State's defense on 3rd down is not going to get the sack in time, but they forced a drop. I cannot believe what I'm seeing, but on 4th and inches, it is another field goal. And Washington just handed the game to Kansas State if they want it. They're basically just assisting them to make sure that they keep the undefeated season alive, but they still have to get a touchdown on this drive, and it's 3rd and 15-ish. Never mind, ignore what I just said a second ago. Neither of these teams want to win this game, except they're going to break a tackle here, and he's still going. He's at the 1. I thought he was in the end zone, but what is up with these teams' defenses giving up the 3rd and longs? All they have to do is just hand it off and simply win this game. Kansas State is once again undefeated going into the national championship. And it's crazy that we're about to see a no-loss team versus a team that's lost 4 games. We already got this matchup in the conference championship, and that means no matter what, the Big Ten's about to get their first champion in this video. Well, it seems like the Wildcats offense has figured themselves out for this championship. They don't want to lose another. But their defense has struggled a lot more. They can't really stop Dalvin Ring that well. He keeps on running for first downs. He just needs to get his team a touchdown. That would really be pure chaos. But a field goal is all Nebraska needs to send it to overtime, and they're getting a lot closer to it. After spiking the ball, there's 45 seconds left. It is 2nd and 10, and he was about to step up and run. But instead, he just threw it for 7 yards, and that could have been intercepted. It was a risky throw right by the linebacker's head. Now they're trying to run the football. I bet they're settling for 3. And they already took their final timeout. I don't know why they do that. Kansas State should use a timeout right here. But since they waited, we are going to go to overtime if this goes in. That's back-to-back games for Kansas State where they can't close it in the 4 quarters. And now they have the ball first, which is not ideal for them. It is touchdown or bust. You don't know what the other team's going to do and what you have to match. But now it is 3rd and 9, and they are going to sling it to the corner where they're close to the end zone. They don't need too much more to get in, though this pass doesn't do much. And you would think they'd just hand it off in this scenario. I think they're about to run the football here. Their quarterback keeps it, and Rico fumbles it to Nebraska. Has Nebraska actually just gotten lucky for like the first time? There is no way that Kansas State's about to lose another championship. I don't think we've ever seen a team lose in a more heartbreaking way, even if they stop them here. All the Cornhuskers have to do is hit this field goal, and they've done it with 4 losses. They've won it all. They get to celebrate the national championship. Back-to-back undefeated seasons for Kansas State until the championship. For what? It didn't get them anything. We have to rewatch this fumble. I mean, their senior quarterback, their star, had it in his hands, and he just got it knocked out by his own teammate. That's actually terrible. Watch 67. He falls over, and on the way down, his back knocked it out. I truly don't think Kansas State can recover from that. Their recruiting classes have not been good enough. This is the final ranking that we're ever going to get to look through. And Texas Tech might be a team to watch in the Mountain West. They're the only team in their conference that can get 5 stars. Going into this final year, if a Sunbelt team doesn't win the national championship, the Pac-12 is going to finish with the most of them in this video. And there's 4 conferences that still haven't had a team win at all. You have the Big 12, the American, the SEC, and Conference USA. This is their final chance to have a champion. Now, when it comes to the Sunbelt and tying the Pac-12 in national championships, their only hope is Miami, but they can't lose to Georgia Tech in the conference championship. And I can't believe Conference USA has a team ranked at 6, 7, and 8. They're all 10 and 2, but they've been respected in the rankings. Then we have the American, no championship from this conference, but Penn State and Syracuse are battling for a spot in the playoffs. And finally, the Big 12. Oklahoma's kind of fallen off, but up here we have Texas and Oklahoma State, so the Cowboys are the Big 12's last chance at winning a championship. For the other conferences, like the ACC, they've already gotten one, but they have Clemson and Liberty playing in their conference championship. And then Kansas State is still pretty solid out of the Big 10, but Nebraska's flipped the script. This time they're the ones that are undefeated. Out of the MAC, we have Ohio State down here at 9 and 3. They're going to be a playoff lock, even though they didn't perform very well in MAC conference play. And then the Mountain West was extremely disappointing, with Texas Tech all the way down here at 5 and 7. Boise State also struggled. field, they are not going to make the playoffs. In the Pac-12, Oregon might, though. Washington State's done well for the first time. And finally, out of the SEC, Alabama's up top for like the first time, but they're not going to make the playoffs, and Ole Miss probably won't either. There's a lot of interesting games we could spectate here, but if anybody's path needs to be followed, it's Miami's, because they're representing the Sun Belt. By the way, when I was originally drafting this map, I had the SEC where the Sun Belt is, but people complained about it, so I flipped the two. Now we're left with the Sun Belt already having 2 national championships, while the SEC is going to have 0. This game is pretty realistic, though. We have Miami struggling with Georgia Tech. They're sending up a Hail Mary, but we're headed to overtime most likely. And we have another one of these games that can't end in the first 4 quarters. We'll see if the Hurricanes can survive right here. They're handing it off with their first play. But you can tell that their running back's a fighter. The wide receiver screen's going nowhere. So it's already 3rd and 10. A lot of pressure on Miami to pick this up, and they're going for a touchdown, which they get. That was one of the best throws we've seen in this video. No other way to put it. And I'm pretty sure the Hurricanes have won every Sun Belt Conference championship that they've gotten to play here at home. Georgia Tech is trying to break that right here, though. They have a chance to pick up the first down, and they drop it again. But we have seen Miami find odd ways to lose to the Yellow Jackets before. They're about to get a sack right here, and they somehow did. Not that 1 yard's really helpful for Georgia Tech, though. Now it is 4th and 9. They have to complete this pass, and they have completed the pass, but it's straight to the Hurricanes instead. The chance of a Sun Belt team winning it all this season is still alive. But I don't think they're going to give Miami a playoff spot. They won their conference championship, but there are a lot of other conference championship winners ranked above them. That's a crazy snub right there, but we got to talk about some of these other scores. Oregon won 55-7. Liberty beat Clemson 55-14. And Kansas State won against Nebraska 49-0. The Cornhuskers just took their first loss with only 110 yards of total offense. So they're not going to have the Heisman winner. Instead, it's going to another USC quarterback. They've at least taken home 3 of them in this video, but you can't say that Joseph Brink didn't deserve it. And I feel like running backs don't rush for enough touchdowns during sim on this game. As for the best receiver in the country, I'm not surprised he comes from the Trojans. And this is the reveal of the final playoff bracket. There is a new face in here with Marshall and Virginia Tech. Now, to my surprise, Marshall beat Penn State 38-7 in the first round, but then they got beat in the exact same fashion in the quarterfinals, so this is who we have for the semifinals. Syracuse represents the American/Big East, which still hasn't won a championship, while Tennessee represents Conference USA, which also still hasn't, but I have a hard time rooting for them as a Kentucky fan. We'll see what happens right here, though. Kansas State is trying to redeem themselves again, but I wouldn't be surprised if they found a way to blow this game. Right now, they're up by 7. Tennessee slings it down the field, and the Wildcats are going to snag the interception. I kind of wanted to see Conference USA have some success, but it also feels good to see them lose, because maybe Kentucky had 0 success throughout this entire video, but neither did the Vols. I will admit, though, I thought they were going to dominate a lot more than they did, and now it's time for the other semifinal matchup. Nebraska could be the first team to win 2 championships, while Syracuse could be the first one to get it done from the American. But this type of collapse from the Cornhuskers after having an undefeated regular season needs to be studied. I mean, there was nothing interesting for us to spectate there. It was simply a blowout. And David Janovich is putting his conference on his back. It all comes down to this final week, this one last game. And if Kansas State loses 3 straight national championships, they have some serious issues. Unfortunately for them, there is no guarantees that they have this one locked up. Syracuse is only down by 5, but they've struggled to move the ball throughout the entire game, and they have to go the length of the field. It is now 3rd and 18. Kansas State seems like they're about to do it. And with that sack, making it 4th and 28, I think we can assume that they're about to close out the championship. They're getting in pressure right here, and that is well short of the marker they're going to win. It took the Wildcats far too long, but they are the final national champion of this video. And the Pac-12, of course, finished with the most as a conference, but we never had a single team repeat. These are the final conference rankings, and I think the biggest thing we can take away from this experiment is it would cause a lot more parity in the college football world. I did notice, though, that even if the national champion always is different, even if it comes from a different conference most years, when it comes to actual conference play, the guys at the top and the guys at the bottom were always the same, so it's not necessarily better in that regard. I can't necessarily conclude if this would be better or worse for the sport, but what I can say is it would save the team a ton on travel costs.